Welcome back to the Witcher lore series. The north is in complete disarray. Temeria scrambles to secure its western border with Verden, whose king had just shifted allegiance to Nilfgaard. Redania is in mourning, King Vesemir's assassination sparking a wave of state-sponsored hate and persecution against the non-human races. Kedwin is up in flames, Scoia'tael and other non-human guerrilla forces inciting rebellions in multiple provinces. The military forces of the three strongest northern kingdoms are now all preoccupied with internal affairs and unable to be mobilized against Nilfgaard. The United North's strategy has all but been broken down by Emir's ingenious schemes. King Demavend of Aedirn and Queen Meve of Lyria and Rivia are now on their own. The legions of the Empire crossed the Aruga and into Dol Angra without incident and laid siege to numerous castles in Lyria and Rivia. Soldiers of Queen Meve fought with extraordinary courage, but could not beat the overwhelming numbers of the Imperials in open battle. Only 1/5 of the Lyrian army remained after a week, and most were confined within city walls, with their supply lines cut off. It was only a matter of time before starvation kicks in, and they will be forced to give in. So Nilfgaard forces continued to march north. They soon entered Aedirn territory and neared the city of Aldersburg. Aldersburg is only a day's journey south of the Aedirnian capital of Vengerberg. King Demavend knew that he had to halt the Nilfgaardian advance here, or all will be lost. He rallied his army center and set up camp on the outskirts of the city, and it did not take long before he heard the clunking of metal and saw the black-coated Nilfgaardians line up on the horizon. The battle raged on for days, but the northerners, outnumbered and outclassed, were decisively beat back. King Demavend managed to escape with a small regiment, but the majority of the Aedirnian army shattered. In the next 2 weeks, both Aldersburg and Vengerberg fell into the Emperor's hand. Imperial soldiers were given permission to take personal loot as reward, and so the two cities' riches were plundered and reduced to naught. Dol Blathana, the Valley of Flowers, was also liberated from Aedirn control, and became an independent elven realm. Now it is headed by the half-elven sorceress Francesca Findabair, according to her previous agreement with Emir. While the invasion of Dol Angra was all going according to plan, the sounds of battle cries and the scent of blood permeating the air. The border between Nilfgaard-occupied Sintra and Temeria was, in contrary, awfully quiet. The Temerians were confused. They bolstered their border defenses against Verden, but saw no sign of an offensive. The silence was becoming scary. It was an ordinary night in early August. Clear skies, no clouds. A Brugian border guard was standing on top of an observation tower looking down at the Aruga River flowing past below. He tried to be as vigilant as he could, despite waves of drowsiness hitting him, because he knew that he was guarding Dillingen, the gateway from Sintra to Bruges. He heard a creaking of wood behind him and promptly turned around suspiciously, only to have a dagger shoved into his throat. With his dying breath, he saw his attacker, a man dressed in black armor top to bottom, only his emerald eyes glistening in the dark. On his chest, a small emblem of a golden sun. Nilfgaardian Black Infantry, the elite regiment of the Imperial Army in charge of special operations, successfully snuck across the Aruga defense line and took down the town of Dillingen. And this is just the attack from the south of Bruges. On the same day, Verdenian forces launched an offensive from the west, and the Dryads of Brokilon Forest attacked from the north. In one coordinated strike, Bruges is now completely cut off and surrounded. The Nilfgaardian 4th Cavalry Division then crossed the Ina River from Bruges into Sodden, laying siege to the city of Mayana. The fighting in Bruges and Sodden proved much more difficult for Nilfgaard than it had been in Dol Angra. The Temerian forces were much better armed and trained than their Lyrian counterparts. On multiple occasions, they were able to use their elite crossbow divisions to cause massive casualties to Imperial soldiers and halt their advance. After almost 3 months of non-stop total war, Nilfgaard finally managed to conquer the cities and establish footholds in both Bruges and Sodden. Now, the Emperor sets his eyes on Temeria, on the city of Maribor on its southern border. The 3 months of drawn-out conflict in Brugge and Sodden bought enough time for King Foltest of Temeria to reinforce defenses and restock supplies to prepare against a siege of Maribor. This proved to be crucial when Nilfgaardian men cut off supplies to the city. The siege continued for almost a month with casualties on both sides, but Nilfgaard was running short on munitions. The Imperials were fighting wars on both the eastern and western fronts, and supplies had to be transported across the Aruga. The long supply lines were not helped by the fact that the remnants of Lyria's navy are now fighting a guerrilla war on water, raiding every supply ship they could find. What was more imminent than the supply shortages was the fact that it was November and winter was coming. Northern soldiers were used to winter, but the Nilfgaardians are not. Emir figured that even if he could take Maribor within the month, it would take another 2 months to capture the Temerian capital Vizima, which it was still 200 miles northwards. He knew that his soldiers' morale would not hold fighting in a harsh winter with supply shortage, so the Emperor ordered a temporary retreat back to Brugge and Sodden for the duration of the winter. King Foltest was relieved, knowing that his realm will live to see another spring. But he also knows that with the first spring breeze, 100,000 Imperials will march north, rested and fresh, with polished armor and sharpened steel. Foltest knew that he had to meet with King Henselt of Kedwin and the young Radovid V of Redania. They needed to decide on a new plan, a plan that will stop the unstoppable Nilfgaardian offensive. Find out about what happens during this fateful spring in the next episode. For now, the North stands at the precipice.